Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Secretary-General, Chair of the session, I greet you this morning for the opening of a session on the draft resolution which will be introduced later by Vanuatu on the United Nations General Assembly requesting an advisory opinion to the International Court of Justice of the legal responsibilities for protecting current and future generations from the climate crisis. As we all know, this is an issue which is important to the United Nations, to the General Assembly, and to the world as a whole. As the President of the General Assembly, I welcome you to engage in these deliberations and look forward to an outcome that will help the General Assembly and also the rest of the United Nations system in addressing this critical challenge to humanity. The General Assembly has the mandate to request advisory opinions from the International Court of Justice under the UN Charter in order to assist with the undertaking of its responsibilities. The General Assembly has a key responsibility to protect current and future generations, and so asking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on this topic serves well with regards to the undertaking of our responsibilities as the General Assembly. The General Assembly has asked a number of advisory opinions in the past, including legal consequences of the separation of the Chicago Archipelago from Mauritius in 2017, accordance with international law of the unilateral declaration of independence of Kosovo, also legal consequences of the construction of the wall in occupied Palestinian territory, the legality of the threat or use of nuclear weapons, the legal consequences of the status of the continued presence of South Africa in Namibia, and also on the Genocide Convention and reservations. All of these advisory opinions have been of assistance to the UN General Assembly in undertaking its responsibilities. We look forward to the deliberations here, and as the Assembly, we will continue to support whatever outcome comes from the deliberations today. Just a note that in part of the methods and approaches that the General Assembly is taking to reduce our carbon footprint, their requirement for suits and ties is waived for the deliberations here. So you're welcome to cool off a little bit, because we will not be using more energy on the air conditioning. So you're quite welcome to remove suits and ties. We're very honoured to have the Secretary-General of the United Nations here in order to give opening comments with regards to the session, and the Secretariat will be providing assistance throughout the deliberations for this very important draft resolution. So once again, thank you very much. Wish you all the best with your deliberations, and look forward to assisting you in both the deliberations and in facilitating and supporting the outcome. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, Miss Chair, Mesdames, Messieurs, au lendemain de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, les nations se sont réunies pour adopter la Charte de San Francisco, qui a marqué l'union des peuples du monde. Et le préambule de cette Charte des Nations unies commence par une référence explicite non seulement à la paix, mais à la paix transgénérationnelle. Gardez bien cette phrase en tête. Nous, peuple des Nations unies, résolus à préserver les générations futures du fléau de la guerre, qui, 2 fois en l'espèce d'une vie humaine, a infligé l'humanité d'indicibles souffrances. Tout le travail des Nations unies et d'accompagner cette paix pour qu'il ne s'agisse pas seulement d'une guerre sans cesse suspendue. Tout le travail des Nations Unies est d'œuvrer tous ensemble et de réunir vos souverainetés étatiques au service de cette paix. Mais voilà, le défi climatique ne peut pas se remporter seul. J'y reviendrai sur la mutation que cela appelle de vos actions. Nous ne comptons plus les rapports des plus hautes instances scientifiques, quelles qu'elles soient, qu'il s'agit des instances scientifiques sur le climat, sur la biodiversité. Le rapport rendu en 2022 sur l'atténuation du changement climatique, je vous l'ai dit, je vous l'ai présenté, n'est autre qu'une litanie de promesses climatiques non tenues. Je vous le dis, en tant que secrétaire général des Nations Unies, le temps n'est plus aux promesses et encore moins aux promesses non tenues. La science nous indique que nous nous dirigeons à grands pas vers un réchauffement climatique d'une rapidité, d'une intensité, d'une inégalité comme jamais connue auparavant dans nos sociétés. Certes, nous devons changer nos modèles de développement. Nous devons les changer en adoptant les énergies renouvelables de toute urgence. Nous devons mettre en place des coalitions qui n'ont jamais existé, des coalitions étatiques renforcées, mais également avec les entreprises. Nous devons protéger ce qui jusqu'à présent était considéré comme des biens communs, protéger nos forêts, protéger nos océans, protéger nos écosystèmes. Nous devons avoir notre conscience de responsabilité sur tout ce qui soutient la vie sur Terre, constamment présent dans nos esprits. Nous devons protéger et savoir, enfin, valoriser les savoirs des peuples autochtones. Les chiffres sont sans appel. 80% de la biodiversité la plus riche au monde est actuellement détenue par les peuples autochtones car ils savent prendre soin de la terre. À nous de savoir prendre expérience et valoriser leur savoir. Il est donc de votre responsabilité aujourd'hui ici de vous accorder sur ce texte de résolution qui est historique. Nous avons adopté déjà par le passé des résolutions importantes, mais le défi qui vous revient, Excellencies, le défi qui vous revient est de vous entendre autour d'un texte qui vise à saisir la Cour internationale de justice d'un avis consultatif. Ce n'est pas du contentieux. L'enjeu climatique est un risque existentiel, transspatial, transgénérationnel et transespèce. J'insiste bien, transspatial, transgénérationnel et transespèce. Cela signifie que vous avez un défi aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, non pas seulement de faire de la coopération internationale comme jusqu'à présent nous avions à faire, mais de devenir des États souverains, solidaires, qui s'inscrivent ensemble, qui inscrivent ensemble leur action dans un contexte de solidarité qui dépasse toutes les frontières de l'imaginable. Il en va de l'avenir pour la protection des générations futures, pour la protection de leurs droits, pour que la vie soit pérenne sur Terre, quelles que soient les espèces. L'œuvre du secrétariat général est de poursuivre ce travail de paix, non seulement pour les peuples d'aujourd'hui, pour les générations futures et pour tout ce qui soutient la vie sur cette terre. Je vous souhaite d'excellents travaux.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Madam Secretary General Emily Gallard. Thank you, President of the United Nations General Assembly, Alan Ware. Good morning, distinguished delegates. I hereby call the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly session to order. Distinguished delegates, we will now enter roll call. Please state present and voting when I call upon your country. Bangladesh, Brazil, Costa Rica, France,
Present and voting.
Japan,
Present and voting.
Madagascar,
Present and voting.
Netherlands,
Present and voting.
Russian Federation, Trinidad and Tobago, United Arab Emirates,
Present and voting.
United States of America,
Present and voting.
Thank you, delegates. We'll now be discussing agenda item 20D on the protection of global climate for present and future generations from climate change, draft resolution A/C2/76/L6, put forth by the Republic of Vanuatu. I call upon Vanuatu to give its opening statement as proposer of the resolution. Distinguished delegates of Vanuatu, you are invited to the rostrum.
Good morning, Mr. President, Madam Secretary General, the Chair, and the fellow delegates. It's an honor for me to speak at the 77th session of United Nations General Assembly. My name is Fatima Asif, and I, along with my fellow representative of Vanuatu, to my side will be representing the government of Vanuatu's views and concerns regarding today's agenda for the protection of global climate for present and future generation of humankind. Vanuatu seeks to request the International Court of Justice to render an advisory opinion on the legal responsibilities to protect current and future generation from climate change and answer the following questions. What are the legal rights of current and future generations to stable, sustainable, and equitable climate? What are the obligations of member states, international organizations, and the other legal persons to stabilize the climate and to provide effective mitigations and adaptations relating to global temperature rising already experienced as a result of human activity? Since climate change is an urgent matter that needs to be dealt with now instead of later, it deserves agreed international action, which is what the Republic, Vanuatu's hopes we arrive today. Climate change is the biggest existential threat humanity has ever faced. It's also being dubbed the sixth extinction event. Global heating, sea level rise, more frequent and intense extreme weather events, and biodiversity decline do not happen in a vacuum. The rights to life, housing, food, and health are infringed by climate change. Vulnerable groups such as women, children, indigenous populations, the elderly, people living in poverty, and other marginalized demographics are facing the brunt of this crisis. And yet, global society continues to implement sustainable solutions at no more than a glacial pace. The latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC report, highlights the continuous rise of greenhouse gases emissions and also highlights the fact that current plans to address the human-induced climate change are not nearly ambitious enough to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. As per Paris Climate Accords of 2015, global carbon dioxide emissions continue to accumulate in the atmosphere and have already caused a drastic rise in global average temperatures approximately 1.3 degrees Celsius since the pre-industrial periods. According to the World Bank, climate change would displace more than 200 million people from their homes by 2050. It is unacceptable how this has not been addressed. It is unacceptable how an existential threat to this magnitude has been brushed under the carpet. It is unacceptable who contribute the least to the climate change, such as Vanuatu. In addition to other small island developing states and other developing nations, are already experiencing climate change and its consequences in its entirety. And those who contribute the most to climate change do not treat this existential threat with the same urgency. This is unacceptable, and we will not idly stand by.
The 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development explicitly recognizes the centrality of cooperation to climate change action, setting out that the global nature of climate change calls for the widest possible international cooperation. It is multifaceted and manifested in a variety of ways in the UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. In 2011, a campaign initiated by our brothers in the island states of Palau and the Marshall Islands revolved around aiming to secure an advisory opinion from the ICJ with respect to transboundary harm and climate change. Their initiative has inspired us to explore the ICJ advisory opinion avenue for more action in the fight against climate change. Palau's request for an advisory opinion helped in developing and increasing the efficacy of litigation for small island developing states, and Vanuatu felt it important to acknowledge and appreciate their efforts. No one single state can solve climate change, and all states will be affected in one way or another by it. Cooperative action is perhaps our best shot at tackling the monumental challenge at hand. Much has been achieved in this context, but there is much more to do. Given the nature and the scale of the climate change threat, the future of the world as we know it may well depend on cooperation. We encourage the fellow delegates to vote in favor of the resolution if you believe that current and future generations have the right to a clean and sustainable environment. We believe that an advisory opinion on climate change from the ICJ will not just summarize states' existing obligations with regards to human rights and climate change, but it can also deliver a progressive interpretation of those obligations and make global progress towards intergenerational equity and climate justice. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Vanuatu. I will now call upon country delegates to deliver their statements. There will be a speaking time of 3 minutes per delegate. At the end of the statement, please indicate if your country is willing to co-sponsor the draft resolution by stating your country name, followed by the words, "will join as co-sponsor." Distinguished delegate of Bangladesh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Bangladesh is pleased that Vanuatu has presented the resolution and bring attention towards the climate rights of current and future generations. Bangladesh is an outspotter of the United Nations Declaration to fight against climate change. Madam Chair Lady, climate change is the biggest challenge for the current and future generations. Global climate change is not a fiction nor an exaggeration. Rather, it is proven fact through undeniable scientific evidences. climate change is a tangible reality with terrible consequences. Bangladesh is the sixth most climate vulnerable country in the world. Bangladesh has experienced an average rise in temperature of 0.5 degrees Celsius between 1976 and 2019. Summers are becoming longer and winters are getting warmer. Mean monthly rainfall for September and October has increased by 43 millimeters. Similarly, the monsoon period has increased as well. The evolving climatic conditions have a devastating impact on the economy, ecosystems, physical and mental health of citizens of Bangladesh. Cyclones are hitting the coast stronger and flooding is getting worse, destroying the landscapes and forcing thousands of inhabitants to flee to the cities. According to an alarming report to the World Bank, Bangladesh may have almost 20 million internal climate migrants by 2050, corresponding to the roughly 12% of the entire population. People are forced to abandon their farming and fishing activities and their other means of livelihoods, threatening the Bengal culture itself. Bangladesh is also facing the rise of sea level, which has accelerated in the past few years. Beyond the rights to a healthy, clean, and sustainable environment, we will have to fight for maintaining the environment and give the opportunity to every Bengal or Vanuatuan to live where they were born. Just as Bangladesh advocated criminalizing environmental destruction with Vanuatu and Samoa at the International Criminal Court, we strongly believe in the rights of future generations in order to protect humanity. As an active member of the Climate Vulnerable Forums and the Vulnerable 20 groups of Ministers of Finance, Bangladesh would like to see every country, and especially the largest contributor of greenhouse gas emissions, taking part in this legal resolution. Bangladesh is co-sponsoring in favor of the draft resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Bangladesh respectfully suggests you to stand in solidarity with future generations by supporting Vanuatu's draft resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It is an honor to take part in this assembly together with representatives of sovereign nations at a point in time when the world needs to face the truth to overcome challenges. I'm here today to show a Brazil that is different from the one portrayed in newspapers and to make you see what truly means to defend our future generations. First of all, Brazil believes in the traditional nuclear family as the foundation of civilization. And if we want to save lives of our children and guarantee the quality of life for them, we must ensure that communism is exterminated and cannot contaminate the thinking of our citizens. This is a first concern. Another important topic is the Amazon biome that makes Brazil the home of the greatest biodiversity, and my administration is taking serious efforts to fully eliminate illegal deforestation, with more human and financial resources to environmental protection agencies. It means respecting indigenous rights, but without forgetting to support agribusiness, as this is one of the most important sectors of our economy and operates through sustainable agriculture, creating jobs and income for our families and an ideal environment for our future generations. We must fight the fallacy that livestock is not aligned with environmental protection, as Brazil is an excellent example that both agendas dialogue very well. Concerning our current efforts on fighting against climate change, Brazil updated its nationally determined contribution in December 2020 and included emissions reduction goals for 2025 and 2030, besides an indicative long-term goal of carbon neutrality by 2060. In this regard, Brazil has taken several initiatives to combat climate change. With the support of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, Brazil's conservation efforts are accelerated in the Amazon through the Partnership for Conservation of Amazon Biodiversity, the Amazon Biodiversity Fund, and others private sector-led initiatives that develop solutions for sustainable development in the Brazilian Amazon. USAID supports in strengthening biodiversity conservation through a productive collaboration with the government of Brazil across a large geographic area, represented 153 protected areas, of which 32% are indigenous lands. This contributes to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and some results can be noted as follows. More than 34 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions were avoided. It achieved a 97% reduction in deforestation in USAID-supported protection areas and accelerated 30 sustainable Amazonian companies. Finally, as a last message, it is important to highlight that the Brazilian Amazon is Brazil's sovereign territory, and therefore Brazil has the right to do what it believes is the best for its people and their livelihood. In this sense, we are not here to erase nationalities and sovereignties in name of an abstract global interest. And with confidence in the liberating power of truth, I reassure that the United Nations can count on Brazil to create a world with greater freedom, especially of speech and religion, prosperity and peace. May God bless us all. With these words, I thank everyone.
Thank you, Brazil. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of Costa Rica. You have the floor.
Costa Rica would like to express its support to the petitions submitted by Vanuatu in order to seek an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. Over the last 20 years, the call to establish the right to a healthy environment has been growing stronger than ever at the international level. On July 28, Costa Rica witnessed a historic decision. With no votes against, Costa Rica have adopted Resolution A/76/L.75 entitled The Human Right to a Clean, Healthy, and Sustainable Environment that recognizes access to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a universal human right. This resolution will undoubtedly help reduce environmental injustices, close protection gaps, and empower people, especially those in vulnerable situations, such as environmental human rights defenders, children, youth, and indigenous peoples. Honorable Chair, Costa Rica marked this year the 50th anniversary of the Stockholm Declaration, an action plan for the human environment, whereby we established for the first time our common conviction that human beings have a fundamental right to an environment of equality that permits a life of dignity and well-being. The international community must know that the world is facing an unprecedented triple environmental crisis, including increasing and catastrophic climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. We are citizens of the world. That is why global problems need global solutions. The last few years, we have experienced extreme natural disasters that have swept the world from Chile to Vanuatu, from Italy to South Africa, including floods, melting ice, forest fires, hurricanes, among others. The impact of climate change is widespread and varied, affecting up to 3.6 billion people today who are considered to be living in climate hotspots across the globe. That's nearly half of the world's population. Small islands and coastal communities continue to bear the brunt, with intensifying marine heat waves, rising sea levels, coast erosion, and flooding. In very low-lying places, extreme sea level events, which used to occur once a century, will happen more frequently by 2050. According to the 2022 recent report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, sea level rise will cause small islands like Vanuatu to disappear and go underneath the sea. All member states' ambitions must be constructed for the planet. Ours and the next generation face the unique challenge in human history of preserving life on the planet and its cultures against the threat of destruction. The international community is responsible to protect the current and the future generations from climate change. We have to act now. There is not Planet B. Costa Rica hopes the International Court of Justice to render an advisory opinion on the legal responsibilities we have. Thank you.
Delegate of Costa Rica, and now call upon the distinguished delegate of France. You have the floor.
Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. President, Madam Secretary General, I have the honor to address the General Assembly today on behalf of France. First and foremost, we would like to take this opportunity to thank Vanuatu for the submission of this draft resolution. France is glad to be able to discuss such forward-thinking solutions with all the delegations present today. France is determined to reach the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees, to halt and preserve biodiversity loss by 2030, and to reach net zero emissions globally by mid-century. We understand that because we share our ecosystems, each nation's security is undeniably tied to that of others. The consequences of climate change and environmental degradation know no borders. In particular, France is very attentive to the problems of the Pacific, and we are aware with great worry of the deleterious effects of sea level rise in New Caledonia, for example, a small island next to Vanuatu. France recognizes that the impacts of the climate and biodiversity crisis pose a threat to the international peace and stability. Fighting climate change, preserving our biodiversity, and ultimately protecting the future generations constitutes a great priority for France at a national and an international level. We are proud to have been a central actor of international environmental discussions by hosting several international events and putting forward different propositions to push forward the development of international environmental law. Our ambition is great as the stakes are high. Despite undeniable efforts to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, the fight against climate change is yet to be efficient. France remains very committed to upholding these goals, as well as all the objectives of the many international environmental conventions we have ratified. More precisely, France is now implementing a greater number of European and national policies. And in that same vein, France is leading different initiatives within different international fora, such as co-presiding with Costa Rica and United Kingdom, the High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. France is convinced that our international efforts to fight climate change and its adverse effects can only benefit from more knowledge of the improvements needed, whether scientific, through the IPCC's work, for instance, or legal, through the processes such as the one sought for by the present resolution. Our national jurisdictions have been actively participating in producing judicial orders to uphold climate obligations and further clarify the different legal underlyings of our international commitments. As such, France is particularly aware of the usefulness of jurisdictions in developing legal responses to the planetary crisis, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. France hopes that all the delegations present today will agree that accumulating commitments to protect nature are unwavering, and such clarifications on the state of these obligations, as proposed by the draft resolution here discussed, will enable us to uphold these commitments and realize what has yet to be done. The International Court of Justice has been a pillar of our international legal system, bringing several valuable insights into our legal instruments over the years. We warmly welcome Vanuatu's proposal and this opportunity to discuss this issue. France is eager to dive into what can only be a riveting debate, and we would also like to invite all other states to join us in this new discussion with an open mind. We must bear in mind that what is at stake here is the necessary greater protection of our planet and ultimately the preservation of generations to come. Thank you, Chair, for giving us the floor.
Thank you, France. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of Japan. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Japan would like to thank the state of Vanuatu as well as the member states of the Pacific Islands Forum for their leaderships on climate change issue and international solidarity. As dialogue members of the Pacific Islands Forum, Japan supports the collaborative work in the Indo-Pacific area who have already faced various problems caused by climate change in recent years. At the 9th Pacific Islands Leaders Meeting, Japan strengthened their partnership based on mutual trust and respect, as well as shared values such as freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, and the environment. In this declaration, Japan and PIF members are addressing climate change with a heightened sense of urgency and ambition. Japan aims to achieve 46% GHG emissions reduction by 2030, is setting an ambitious target which is aligned with long-term goal of achieving net zero by 2050. Japan will continue to support all the parties to be on board to tackle climate change with finance, capacity building, and technology development and transfer. Japan would like to encourage other countries, including major emitters, to make further efforts as well. Climate change is a challenge that calls for the collective efforts of humanity as a whole to resolve. Japan already emphasizes the importance of a free and open international order based on the rule of law and the importance of international institutions in guiding our world towards a better future. Especially, Japan recognizes the ability of the International Court of Justice in giving wise opinion on the state of the international law and protecting a peaceful future. However, Japan already expresses its caveats concerning new subject of international law. Japan wants to express its concerns regarding the International Court's opinion on a concept that is ambiguous and not universally recognized. Respectfully suggest to the Assembly that the principle of responsibility should rule the operative clause instead of terms like obligations. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Delegate, I will now call upon the distinguished delegate of Madagascar.
Honorable Présidente, pertinence de la question soulevée. En effet, bien que Madagascar soit l'un des pays il est pourtant considéré comme l'un des 10 pays trésor mondial en termes de biodiversité, la richesse malgache est aujourd'hui durablement 20% des espèces endémiques, animales et végétales menacées d'extinction Madagascar porte donc un intérêt tout particulier aux enjeux climatiques et à la question de la préservation de notre environnement. Il a ainsi signé les accords de Paris en accord avec les engagements pris par l'ensemble des États signataires tardent à être respectés. Madagascar souffre de cette inaction. L'année dernière, son peuple a souffert de l'une des premières famines climatiques déclarées par le Programme alimentaire mondial de l'ONU. Encore aujourd'hui, nous savons que les catastrophes climatiques sont amenées à s'amplifier dans les prochaines années, ce que nous constatons d'ores et déjà à Madagascar, qui seul manque de ressources pour y faire face. Parler du futur et de l'avenir du vivant est donc essentiel pour Madagascar. Quatrième plus grande île du monde, son futur est directement menacé par la montée des eaux. Des millions de gens à être déplacés et leurs droits humains les plus fondamentaux spoilés. Madagascar soutient donc la résolution. Néanmoins, lors des négociations, Madagascar se tiendra résolument au principe de responsabilité commune, mais différenciée et capacités respectives, principe adopté lors des accords de Paris et reconnaissant que les différents pays n'ont pas tous les mêmes capacités ni les mêmes responsabilités au changement climatique. Madagascar remercie l'ensemble des délégations et l'honorable
Thank you, Madagascar. May I now have the distinguished delegate of the Netherlands. You have the floor.
International cooperation is the best way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Climate change is not only at the forefront of the world story. It has arrived, it is here, and it will not leave any country untouched. Adaptation should be the main initiative of all governments right now. People in the land of the Netherlands are feeling the effects. Notably, 55% of the Netherlands rise in the Netherlands is twice as fast to rising temperatures, degradation of air quality. Gas emissions. The sea level off the Dutch coast could rise by 1.2 meters by the year 2100. Climate Act of 2019 laid out goals to reduce the Netherlands' Netherlands has also announced as of 2018, the United Nations have found solutions to problems that once may have seemed too complex. The Netherlands stresses the vested duty and the ability of the member states to begin to solve a complex problem once more. Thank you again.
Thank you, the Netherlands. Of New Zealand.
Honorable Chair, President, Secretary General, New Zealand knows the importance of the problem we are arguing today and uphold and protect the rights of future generations. New Zealand knows the problem as we believe that strong environmental care legislation for our future citizens of the world, and we refer to them as ours since we are talking about our future descendants. World population is 7,000 millions of inhabitants, and it is estimated New Zealand is 100% committed to the green cause. This is why our democratic government has public policies where it intends to make the majority of vehicles in our country electric in 2035. Build more renewable generation, specifically increase investment to support new technologies. New Zealand does a lot of innovation in technology. Clean and low carbon energy, thus creating a sustainable global economy. Make an economy that works and is friendly to the environment is essential for our country. It is our mission. With this, New Zealand intends to support this noble position because it's not only considered the earth is asking us for help, and we have the right and the law to help in this situation. Positive, it's time to think big. As united countries, we can make a difference. Remember the first time you saw an immense forest? Think how much water refreshes you, or walk barefoot on the grass. Think how much the animals. Wouldn't you want that for the future generations? As a country, we support the creation of a declaration of the rights of future generations. Believe it is absolutely necessary, and New Zealand is committed to being a part of this important moment. We believe that together we can ensure a better life for all those who will come. We will find a way to rights of future generations. where all countries can work together on not only words, actions. Let's take care of who will come.
Thank you, New Zealand. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of Nigeria. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, de passer la parole à l'État du Nigeria. Madame la Présidente, distinguée l'État du Nigeria tient à remercier d'abord l'Assemblée générale pour l'occasion qu'on lui donne pour s'exprimer une fois de plus sur les questions climatiques. Comme mes prédécesseurs l'ont souligné précédemment, il n'est plus à discuter sur les effets négatifs du changement climatique dans le monde et sur l'humanité. Une partie du monde aujourd'hui ne peut ignorer les effets du changement climatique. Par la prise de conscience de cette réalité, le monde a fait un pas de géant à Paris pour relever les défis du changement climatique. Le Nigeria est fier d'avoir participé au processus menant à l'adoption de l'accord de Paris en 2015. La COP 21 a marqué un tournant dans l'engagement de la communauté mondiale à lutter contre le changement. Le Nigeria poursuit ses efforts déterminés à réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre. Au niveau continental, le Nigeria appuie l'initiative de l'Union africaine sur la construction de la Grande Muraille verte pour stopper la désertification. Certes, le Nigeria n'est pas un pays insulaire, mais il est aussi vulnérable au changement climatique comme tout État d'ailleurs. Lors de la 71e session de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies en 2016, la République fédérale du Nigeria, par la voix de son président, a exprimé sa position favorable et son engagement pour lutter contre le changement climatique. Pour rappeler ses propos, il disait « Nous devons travailler ensemble pour sauver notre planète des dévastations du changement climatique pour un avenir plus prospère. » Plus loin, il ajoute « Il faut rester déterminé à prendre des mesures audacieuses pour transformer et sauver notre monde. » Et voilà l'initiative du Vanuatu qui demande à la Cour internationale de justice de rendre un avis consultatif sur la responsabilité juridique de protéger les générations présentes et futures du changement climatique. C'est une initiative à saluer pour son audace. Son intérêt va au-delà des préoccupations des frontières du Vanuatu. Elle s'étend dans tout le monde entier. Elle est la plus haute importance pour les pays du monde et les peuples vulnérables au climat et surtout compte pour le monde et l'humanité tout entière. Il faut voir aussi par là une opportunité pour la communauté internationale de sensibiliser les États sur la responsabilité qui est la leur de lutter contre le changement climatique et protéger les droits des générations présentes et futures. Alors, le Nigeria est pour la soumission de cette résolution du Vanuatu à l'Assemblée générale pour un débat général en plénière. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Nigeria. As Russian Federation is not yet in the room, I will now skip Russia for now, and we'll come back later. I would like to call upon the distinguished delegate of Trinidad and Tobago. You have the floor.
And thank you, Chair, distinguished delegates, and participating The nation of Trinidad and Tobago recognizes the severity of climate change. As a member of the Caribbean chain of small island Trinidad and Tobago is particularly vulnerable. In fact, climate change is already a reality for the citizens. Rising sea levels, increased flooding, unpredictable weather conditions, erosion, habitat loss are only the start of what already begun facing. With this reality in mind, the government of Trinidad and Tobago is taking steps in its own country to ensure it does its part to tackle this problem in the economy driven by oil and gas, chemicals, and manufacturing. For example, Trinidad and Tobago have committed to reducing cumulative greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by the end of 2030 in the main emitting sectors of industry, power generation, and transportation. Trinidad and Tobago has also invested greatly in renewable energy, recognizing that it is something that must be accomplished for the benefit of the future. Trinidad and Tobago has shown this interest for the investment in the environment and future generations in the international space as a proud signatory of the Paris Agreement and a supporter of the General Assembly Resolution A75217 on the protection of the global climate for present and future generations of humanity, among others. However, one nation's efforts alone, and even the effort of a group of nations, will not be enough to counter the effects of climate change and ensure a safe future for future generations. We must all act. We must all think of the future. The actions we take today to lessen the most drastic effects of climate change will benefit not only us, but our children and their children and generations after them. It is not an understatement to say that the decisions made today could change the future lives of billions of people across the globe. Trinidad and Tobago urges the nations gathered here today to not end this discussion with empty words and promises. This should reflect a united global front against climate change that threatens to end humanity as we know it. As such, Trinidad and Tobago will proudly join as a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. I now call upon the distinguished delegate of United Arab Emirates. You have the floor.
Good morning, Your Excellencies and distinguished delegates. Delegates of the United Arab Emirates are delighted to be part of today's conference. We hope that our fellow delegates will engage in relevant debate in order to make this conference productive. Let's all make wise decisions after considering each resolution, voting for a better future for all. The United Arab Emirates is at the forefront of climate action in the Middle East, with the ambitious target of reducing the carbon footprint of the UAE by 70% by 2050. We work in line with the Paris Agreement, developing long-term strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the UAE around the pillars of energy, economy, infrastructure, transport, and agriculture, with the deployment of clean energy solutions being at the forefront of our strategic model. With some constructive amendments, this delegation could support the resolution as the overall intention is aligned with our national efforts. However, we will not co-sponsor. I would also like to request a point of order. Madam Chair, I have been informed of a sensitive matter and do not wish to alarm the delegates unnecessarily until further information has been obtained. But until then, will the Chair allow me to rise and read the statement from Russia on behalf of its delegate, who has removed himself from the proceedings in an abundance of caution today?
Could you repeat that again, please?
I've been informed of a sensitive matter, and I don't want to alarm anyone unnecessarily until further information has been obtained. But will you allow me to rise and read the Russian delegation's statement on behalf of him as he has removed himself from today's proceedings?
Delegate, I will call upon you after the round of statements and with the United States. I will now call upon the distinguished delegate of the United States of America. You have the floor.
Hello and thank you, Chair and esteemed delegates. The delegation of the United States realizes that the continued degradation of the environment, increasing global temperatures, and biodiversity loss are common threats to the global community. Together, we bear the responsibility and consequences of each action that places our existence on this planet in jeopardy. We are challenged by our capacity as humans to achieve extraordinary advances. However, our growth, our prosperity, our humanity requires more. Our humanity requires resolve, a will to push further and fight for our very existence on this planet and the existence of future generations. The United States recognizes this challenge. Will we meet this challenge by sacrificing short-term gain for long-term goals? Will we deploy our international strength and innovation? Or will we squander our opportunity for the sake of the status quo? We need to act in ways with our eyes set on the future. The United States supports the goal of meeting this challenge through domestic and international efforts. For example, the United States has proudly rejoined the Paris Agreement, and just this August, the United States committed to the largest climate investment ever to reduce carbon emissions in the United States. Our commitments also extend to aiding our international neighbors to mitigate and adapt to climate change challenges through billions of dollars in investments impacting millions of people worldwide through USAID. The United States is committed to investing for future generations. We rely on our future generations for our survival of our species, our traditions of democracy, and our principles of freedom. Our future generations will be challenged enough with upholding the peace in which generations before sought so hard to preserve. In asking future generations to uphold this peace, we can only reciprocate by ensuring a stable climate for those future generations. Without a stable climate, the holders of peace and peace itself will be in jeopardy. The United States is further determined to push for continued peace to protect the best tools to face this climate crisis. There is no better tool than democracy. In doing so, we protect the voices of the present that must speak for the future. Thus, democracy is more critical now more than ever. The United States will ensure that the democratic world perseveres untainted, uncorrupted, and unwavering in the most testing of circumstances. We must do this to protect our climate and our future generations. The United States is open to proposals that protect future generations, but will not co-sponsor the draft resolution as is. However, the United States looks forward to discussions with its sponsors and supporters.
Thank you, United States of America. As a point of order was called upon by the United Arab Emirates, United Arab Emirates have requested to take the floor on behalf of the Russian Federation. Also, this statement will take no more than 3 minutes. United Arab Emirates, please proceed with your statement on behalf of the Russian Federation. You have the floor.
Russia wants that
Thank you, Costa Rica. We have a point of order from Costa Rica once more, delegates. So I will now call upon a decision from those present here. If you agree to have the Russian Federation statement delivered by United Arab Emirates, please raise your placards. Please keep them up. Brazil, have you decided? I will repeat the question. Those in favor of United Arab Emirates delivering the statement on behalf of Russian Federation, please hold up your placards. Those who oppose the delivery of statement by UAE on behalf of Russian Federation, please hold up your placards. Could you please hold it vertical? That Tobago, are you holding it up? Those abstaining, please hold up your placards. Aye. Majority vote is no. Therefore, United Arab Emirates, you are not allowed to deliver the statement on behalf of the Russian Federation. Thank you. We will now proceed to the statements by stakeholders. There will be a speaking time of 2 minutes per stakeholder. Delegate of Kansai Electric Power Company, you have the floor.
Special privilege for Kansai Electric to reaffirm its commitments for public-private partnerships to accelerate access to energy and eliminate extreme poverty by 2030. An energy transition is already underway. The board needs enhanced cooperation to invest in technology. As a business with deep connections to the environment, strives to reduce its environmental impacts and risks of business activities. Which include nuclear energy, blended finance schemes should be adopted to enhance the energy transition towards a climate neutral. Governance frameworks and investment plans should be aligned with long-term objectives, in alignment with the SDGs. While ensuring sustainable economic growth,
Electric Power Company. I will now call upon the stakeholder ExxonMobil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Excellencies, stakeholders, and distinguished delegates. It is an honor for ExxonMobil to address this hall to reaffirm its commitments within the United Nations to mitigating climate change and being an answer to the need for energy for current and future generations. ExxonMobil is dedicated to the transformation of our energy system and works to reduce emissions in the near term while striving to advance decarbonization solutions to meet the demands of modern society in providing products essential for modern life, while enabling people to live healthy, prosperous lives in an ever-changing world. ExxonMobil believes that there is no single solution for addressing the risks of climate change. Similarly, there is no one entity, state, or organization capable of handling this challenge on its own. Public officials charged with addressing the climate challenge can learn valuable lessons from what has worked in the private sector and the fossil fuel industry. ExxonMobil has supported development of climate science in partnership with governments and academic institutions for nearly 40 years. Positioning for a low-carbon energy future, ExxonMobil has long taken action by reducing greenhouse gas emissions in its operations, providing products that help consumers reduce their emissions, and supporting research into technologies breakthroughs. Proper incentives can help develop even more new technologies and innovative business models that hold the best chance of making significant progress in reducing emissions while enabling economic growth. In this sense, ExxonMobil would request that countries take into consideration the efforts of the fossil fuel industry and the need to provide them with the means to advance their technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ExxonMobil. I now call upon the stakeholder Greenpeace to deliver her statement. You have the floor.
Your Excellencies and distinguished delegates, Vanuatu in seeking an advisory, procrastinated in taking actions to mitigate the and it has procrastinated again now. The Paris Agreement has entered into force in promised to keep their gas emissions, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, most countries are not slow down and are expected to have larger emissions by 2030. Extractive corporations continue to such as our land, water, and air, but also denying the existence of climate change. However, the effects of climate change cannot be denied anymore. With the current rate of consumption, the world only has 7 years before it has exhausted its budget of carbon to keep temperature increases below 1.5 degrees Celsius. We are gathered here today to decide on which path to take. Either we remain to be complacent or neutral, or we take the path to be more proactive in doing our share in mitigating the effects of climate change. We should do more than mere acknowledgement of our obligations and start taking concrete actions and taking responsibility. Supporting the campaign for an ICJ advisory opinion costs nothing, but means everything to nations hit hardest by the climate crisis.
Thank you, Greenpeace. I will now call upon the delegate of Stop Ecocide International to deliver a statement. You have the floor.
Chère Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, nous tenons à remercier tout particulièrement le Vanuatu pour son initiative à l'agenda de la politique internationale, lui qui est un leader parmi les nations insulaires. Si l'on regarde vers l'extérieur, cette Assemblée et la Cour ont pour mission de traiter les crimes, la paix, la sécurité et le bien-être du monde. Notre communauté mondiale est actuellement confrontée à 2 menaces qui appellent une action urgente. Il s'agit des menaces interdépendantes que sont le changement climatique et la perte de biodiversité, à des niveaux si graves que le rapport du GIEC décrit des changements déjà en cours, tels que l'élévation continue du niveau de la mer, qui sont irréversibles même sur plusieurs siècles. Le rapport indique également que le seuil de réchauffement planétaire convenu au niveau international, 1,5 degré au-dessus des niveaux pré-industriels, est très proche. Mais ces menaces ou changements ne sont pas d'origine naturelle. Ils ont en commun une cause fondamentale, essentielle, à savoir la détérioration et la destruction massive des écosystèmes que l'on désigne aujourd'hui de plus en plus pour le crime d'écocide. Il y a quelques années, lors de la 18e session de cette Assemblée, 2 des pays les plus vulnérables au climat dans le monde, le Vanuatu et les Maldives, ont eu le courage de demander que l'on envisage sérieusement d'inclure ce crime dans le statut de Rome. Le terme écocide désigne des actes illicites commis en sachant qu'il existe une forte probabilité que ces actes causent des dommages graves, irréversibles ou durables à l'environnement. Ainsi, nous suggérons respectueusement à l'Assemblée qu'il est temps de s'attaquer sérieusement à la menace criminelle qui pèse sur l'avenir de la civilisation humaine. Nous vous invitons à soutenir l'appel d'un monde menacé et à faire preuve de solidarité avec les générations futures et les uns avec les autres. Nous vous invitons à adopter le projet de résolution et à l'amender pour inclure le crime d'écocide. Madame la Présidente, chers collègues, nous vous remercions pour votre attention.
Thank you, Stop Ecocide International. I will now call upon the delegate of Amazon to deliver his statement. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Madam Secretary, Madam Chair, honorable delegates, and stakeholders, thank you for the opportunity to speak. In April 2019, Amazon launched a climate pledge to build a cross-sector community of companies, organizations, and individuals, and partners working together to address the climate crisis and solve the challenges of decarbonizing our economy. Amazon became the first company to sign the climate pledge after co-founding the initiative in 2019 in accordance with the Paris Agreement. It is therefore not a question that Amazon is not only a huge proponent of climate change, but we are committed to the pursuit of advancing environmental sustainability for current and future generations. Amazon believes the United Nations should render its advisory opinion in support of Vanuatu's position on the legal rights of current and future generations to a stable climate, because addressing climate change is a shared duty and obligation. In the United States, total economic losses of about $31.2 million were caused due to extreme events in 2020. And no less than island states and nations like Vanuatu are the most vulnerable, according to the 2022 IPCC report on climate change. Signing the pledge is only the beginning. We know what you're thinking. This is not a marketing ploy. Amazon has unfathomably large carbon footprint, so carbon reductions can make a difference, and we are committed to using our size and our scale to make a difference in preserving the natural world. But Amazon can't do it alone. We want to invest in your countries, your people, but our investment has to make sense. It must make sense not only for us, but for the entire world, as it is and what it will become. Climate change is the most consequential and existential problem our society is facing and future societies will face. At Amazon, we embrace the mindset of winning big. To win big means to generate impact, to influence, to inspire, but more importantly, to win together. Not only do we recognize and reaffirm the zero draft resolution, but we reinforce our support, and we invite all the delegates and stakeholders to join us and win big together for current and future generations. Thank you.
Madam Chair, the Netherlands would like to make a point. In response to Costa Rica's specific point, Russia did inform the Secretariat via the chair. I believe that should have been a decision made by vote.
Netherlands point taken. I've conferred with the Secretariat, and we will allow Russia Federation to deliver her statement, his statement, after the break via Zoom. We will now continue with the statements by stakeholder. I would like to call upon the delegate of Alibaba to deliver a statement. You have the floor.
Last but not least, Alibaba begins by recognizing the efforts of those involved in the proposed reforms to protect the rights of present and future generations from climate change. Our company name comes from the stories of Alf Laila wa Laila, or the Arabian Nights, associated with the Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. Alibaba is no thief, but a business person who helps the global village grow and thrive by granting exposure to small and medium-sized companies. We simplify business anywhere, everywhere, by giving suppliers exposure to small and large platforms and tools to reach a global audience while helping buyers source products and suppliers efficiently. We aim to do so sustainably. ESG and common prosperity are our two key strategies of social responsibility. Alibaba, under its carbon neutrality roadmap, is committed to carbon neutrality for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 2030. It has set a 50% carbon intensity reduction target for Scope 3 emissions by 2030, based on 2020 levels. Alibaba Cloud, its cloud service, will have a higher Scope 3 target and aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030 in all three scopes. Alibaba has saved 620,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, equivalent in emissions in 12 months, by using cleaner sources of energy, the amount generated by 13,000 US households annually. This has been by increasing Alibaba's use of greener logistics, renewable sources of energy, energy-efficient technologies, and incentivizing consumers to buy eco-friendly products. We have to protect ourselves from the harmful impacts of climate change if we want to continue to enjoy our forms of wealth. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates and stakeholders. The Secretariat would like confirmation once again on the co-sponsors to Vanuatu's draft resolution. It is the Secretariat's understanding that the following countries have stated to join as co-sponsors. They are Bangladesh, Netherlands, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, thank you. If any other delegation decides to co-sponsor, please inform the Secretariat. The general debate will now take a 10-minute break to prepare for the next segment.